some brief remarks from Ms. Khadija Musa, Country Representative of the United Nations Development Program.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome, Your Excellency, Mr. Ramadan, to sit back and reflect on the environment and to make a commitment to see where we go from here for the future. I have been, of course, I'm a news junkie, so I've been watching all kinds of news which deals with climate change and which puts climate change to really think whether it's really happening or not. I have seen fires in the US, elsewhere in the world. I have watched reports of people in Bangladesh having less drinking water and the sea seeping into their drinking water, the wells they have in their homes. I have seen major floods in Europe. Lives have been lost. We have to think about those people and think how we can reduce this continuous deterioration of our environment. That is not only limited to cleaning up the environment in terms of trash or making sure we have proper processes for solid waste, but it is our footprint. It's each and every one of us. I lived for almost 4.5 years in Egypt, and you know Egypt depends on the Nile. And the Nile is, the source of the Nile is Lake Victoria, which is in East Africa. And during colonial times, the colonial powers signed an agreement, saying, a treaty actually, saying that the waters that come from Lake Victoria belongs 90% to Sudan and Egypt. Now, because of climate change, and East Africa does not have as much rain as they used to, as often as they used to, all of a sudden they have discovered, wow, this is our natural resource too. We are the source of the Nile. How can two countries have 90% control? So that can bring another war, disagreement, and many other conflicts. Natural resources can be the future conflict that we might face. Governments have to be really careful when powerful countries with plenty of money come and buy your natural resource. It then means you're losing control of it for the future. I was reading a book called Winner Takes All, and it actually focuses a lot with the money power of China, where China is buying, of course, a lot of resources because they have the power. And I read, for example, in Peru, they paid $3 billion for a whole mountain of copper. So when there's a shortage of copper, China won't have shortage of copper. I mean, and there are many other resources. You can talk about fertile land, it's the same issue. Waterways is the same issue. And keeping those resources clean and good, and which can nourish the fertile land to be used for becoming a bread basket for those countries, is, for all of us in the world, is extremely, extremely important. Here in Guyana, we have, of course, beauty of nature that is surrounding us. It is important that the local government, local municipalities, and the overall government structures work together to be efficient and to clean up. And we can't just pick it up, and if we just pick it up and it has nowhere to go in the end, it's still going to be a problem. So we have to look at beyond picking it up. And the UN, as UN resident coordinator here and UNDP representative, I am making all the effort I can to work with all the agencies of the UN that is here to ensure that there's a coordinated effort through this particular component, because it affects each and every one of us. We'll be looking at practices around the world and see what we can learn from, how it can be applied in Guyana. It is also important for each and every Guyanese to realize that trash can be money. Actually, in New York, where I am, my family is based, we do recycle, for example, once every 2 weeks. As soon as you put your recycle out, there are cars that come through because of, and actually the numbers of people who came through to go through the recycle increased during the downturn of the economy, and you saw your aluminum cans going, your bottles going, you know, and you have to think about that. So the trash that piles up around town here or in the interior is actually money. It can produce resources for the country to improve in many different areas. It can generate fuel. There are countries that have developed microeconomic projects or activities that people are actually earning money from generating fuel logs from trash. And they're earning money selling it to the rest of the community. And you know what that does? It reduces cutting trees and therefore saves the environment as well, which is really, really important. So there are many, many layers of things that can be achieved and done. And I work closely, of course, with the government, and we talk quite a bit with Ministry of Environment. And I know that the government is really open and ready for introducing change that will carry Guyana to the future and to preserve the natural resources that is here. There is one other thing which I noticed, which I will make a special request to Your Excellency and the Minister of Natural Resource and Environment, and I think I will stop there since I've said too much, is I see a lot of buildings going up. And if you haven't noticed, look at the glass that they're putting on those buildings. They're reflective glass. They reflect the sky and they kill birds. One of the treasures of this country is the birds. I am so happy in the weekend when I sit on my terrace with a cup of tea and see this month which birds have come through my garden. 1 month I have all parrots, another month I have some bluebirds, some yellow birds. I can't keep up with them. I want to buy now a book of birds so I know, and a binocular, so I know what is coming through. That is really a treasure of this country. And I think it's only a code change before these mirror windows keep growing. I really would ask you to ask Ministry of Housing to forbid them. I think in the old times, people were really smart. You saw they had shutters to keep the glare out. They didn't have these things. People are even putting this film in their old windows so that they get rid of the glare of sun. But you don't have to do that. You can get a sheer cloth and hang it like a simple curtain or anything that rolls up. It can be like blinds, it can be made. And you don't need that sheer reflector in your house. So let's work together. let's make sure that we continue to reserve food, as everybody said, and continue to work towards promoting clean and healthy environment. Water is very important. We should not waste. Those of us who, of course, wash their cars every day should be careful, even though that, you know, we have much, much more water in this country, and water can actually be exported if it's kept clean. And one day, you know, maybe even Bangladesh will come for clean water to Guyana, because you have plenty. But let's keep it that way. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
We have here in our midst the President of Guyana, along with the Minister of Natural Resources, and I'm quite sure that your concerns will be addressed as well. I can't help but emphasize the importance of our natural resources. We should all remember that natural resources are not replaceable, and as such, they should be conserved and protected in a way that will benefit future generations. The next item on our program is a piece from Ms. Keisha Conway of Winford Gardens Primary School, and her piece is titled Time to Clean Up. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Ms. Keisha Conway.
Good morning. Garbage we see all over, left, right, and center. All over the city is garbage, what a pity. Time to clean up this place. Georgetown is a disgrace. Garbage all about, garbage all about. You carry out the clean up campaign, you got a bout on your head and shame. Cause when you're done, clean up the drain. Tomorrow is garbage again. We should understand and lend a helping hand. Look for a garbage bin to throw all the garbage in. For everyone to be healthy, the surroundings got to be tidy. So never you again litter the street, carpet and rain. Time to clean up this place. Georgetown is a disgrace. Garbage all about, garbage all about. You carry out to clean up campaign, you got a bout on your head and shame. Cause when you're done clean up the drain, tomorrow is garbage again. We must not continue this way. Something positive we must say. Encourage others today to go the acceptable way. To clear the garbage away. Truly there's no other way. Our values will soon be seen if the city decent and clean. Time to clean up this place. Georgetown is a disgrace. Garbage all about, garbage all about. You carry out to clean up campaign, you got a bout on your head and shame. Cause when you're done clean up the drain, tomorrow is garbage again.
Madam Chairperson, ministers of the government, members of the parliament, members of the diplomatic corps, school children, friends all. This, of course, is a very significant anniversary of the World Environmental Day, because it's the 40th anniversary, the 40th time we are celebrating this event from 1973, after the decision was taken in 1972. It came about, in my view, because by that time, world leaders began to recognize what some scientists were pointing to for a long while, that our own activities were creating problems for our world and creating environmental concerns that could devastate our planet. The demand that we use, there was therefore a demand that we use our world resources in a more responsible way, and thus the concept of sustainable development came about for us to be more reasonable and think about our future, think about the generations that are coming after us, so that they too can have a good life. This year the theme is very appropriate: think, eat, and save. Think before we act, knowing that every one of our actions will have some impact. And therefore, it seems to me reasonable for us to begin with ourselves as individuals, to minimize whatever our actions that can have impact on the environment, negative impact, and to maximize those that can have a positive impact to preserving and perpetuating our natural environment. We should consume, as has been said here before, what we actually need. And of course, while we have to eat, some of us eat too much. I'm still trying to throw off my own weight. But at the same time, it is important that we do not waste. Waste is a terrible thing. It's alarming to consider the wastage that we've had. Only yesterday, I think it was, or the day before yesterday, in the British Parliament, MPs pointed out in a report that they've just given that between 30 and 50% of the food produced in the world is wasted. And this is a devastating figure to think about it, about how much we waste. It's a shocking shame when we consider that a large part of the world's population, they are dying from hunger, and that's a big struggle that the world itself has set its task with the Millennium Development Goals by the United Nations. And moreover, from the same report, they're talking about undernutrition, apart from starvation and people dying from starvation. There's a huge problem clouded by the fact that so many people are dying from starvation. It clouds the fact that 30% of the world's population are undernourished. They do not have the type of food badly need for their own sustenance. The impact on our children is even more devastating. That is why it was very good to see our children trying to get over the message to us in the beautiful drama that was performed here just now. The figures in 2010 show that 170 million children under 5, that is 26% of the world's children, suffer from stunting, lack of growth, and that comes fundamentally because of the lack of food and the nourishing food that they need for their own development. Vitamin A deficiencies affect between 100 to 140 million children worldwide. consequences of this is that some 250,000 children lose their sight every year, and about half of these die within 12 months. The waste of food is the waste not only of the food itself, which is a great shame and a sin by itself, but it is wasted of other resources, such as energy, fuel that is needed to produce this food. It is the wastage of fertilizers that we need to produce the food. It's the waste of labor that goes into these things. And of course, as we in Guyana know, particularly those of us in Georgetown know particularly well, that it affects and harms and disfigures, in some cases, our own environment in the form of garbage. And it's a waste of human resources. And if we move from the position that the most important factor for development is the human being, is the human person, and we have all of these figures, then you can see that we are even retarding our own social and economic development by the kind of waste that takes place in our world. And that, of course, what is also tragic is the fact that we are at the moment producing enough food for everyone who lives in our world, and yet we have such wastage for some of them, lack of development of technology in the third world countries, but in other places for some frivolous reasons, like the banana got a speck, or the potato is not the right size to be sold in the supermarket, or they're not consistent with some aesthetic views. So all of those things go wasted. The problem is not tackled now, will have even greater consequences in the not too distant future. Already we have 7.1 billion people living in the world, and it is anticipated that by 2050 there will be some 9.3 billion people occupying our planet. And if this tendency continues, and if nothing is done to halt, first of all, and reverse what is taking place, then surely we can see the tremendous sufferings that will be ahead of us. We are meeting too at a time when natural disasters are creating terrible havoc in our world. Right now, dominating our screens is the great floods that is affecting Central Europe. One of the countries, the country that I dearly love because I spent a lot of part of my life, but a very nice part of my life in the then Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic. And it grieves me to see the flood that is taking place in what I consider one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And I want to take this opportunity to extend to the people of Central Europe, particularly my friends in the Czech Republic, our solidarity, and to let them know that they are in our thoughts at this difficult time. We also see what took place in Oklahoma. I just saw last night on the television that it is said it was the widest tornado in probably centuries. And you see on your television screen the devastation that it has created. And we're seeing every single year that these natural disasters are not only becoming more frequent, but they're becoming even more intense. And the effect on human lives, the suffering that it is bringing to people is incalculable. Maybe you can calculate in cash the amount of dollars that is destroyed in property, but you cannot calculate the sufferings that ordinary people go through when these things happen. And we also live in the Caribbean, where we see devastating hurricanes every year affecting our brothers and sisters and even ourselves here in Guyana. So I think all of these things forces us to sit up and take notice, because it is sad that even though we have all of this, there are still some people, and some of them quite influential in influential places, who still argue that climate change is not with us or is not an issue. However, even those who believe that climate change is a problem and it is affecting us at this point in time, seems incapable of stopping the harmful effects of what is taking place. It was in recognition of these issues, natural disasters, climate change, the social relations that we have, the relations we have between countries. A lot of these things are artificial because human beings, I think, have single aspiration to try to have a better life for themselves and for their children. But it is in recognition that these things continue to persist that in the 1990s that Chenny Dragon talked about the need for a new global human order, a new way of thinking, a new way of dealing with our problems that as it exists. And that program, that new global human order was adopted by the United Nations. And I think next month there is at the UN some meeting to look at how that idea can continue to be developed so that it can make a contribution to making the world a better place. New thinking and new action where the general interest must always be put before the individual interest. Because individuals who put their interest before the general tend to promote and promote it in our psyches as well. Greed, corruption, and all kinds of other vices which must have an impact on our environment. Guyana has, as I said, since the 1990s, been taking a very positive and forthright position on this global issue. This, of course, is one of the most important global problems affecting us. And the low carbon development strategy that we have elaborated, while we do not say it is the best thing for every country in the world, but we think it's a model that can be considered and can probably make a modest contribution to halting and reversing the problems that we face. We in our own, in Guyana ourselves, we cannot think about this low carbon development strategy as something that is complete and something that is unchanging, but all of us involved in different aspects of life, social sciences, the natural sciences, must continue to think how we can develop it and how we can make it better and how we can make it serve our people in a better way. All in all, despite the problems that we have with the garbage in the city of Georgetown, and I'm not trying to minimize that problem, it is a huge problem and it is something that we have to tackle. And believe me, it's not only in Georgetown, it's on the coastal areas and the NDCs, and it's a growing problem in our interior areas, as I mentioned in my speech on Independence Day. But generally, we also have some positives that we can be very, very proud of. Guyana is one of 17 countries out of 189 countries that is being recognized by the FAO of not only achieving the Millennium Development Goal as far as cutting hunger is concerned, but we are only one of 17 countries that have actually improved nutrition. So there must be something that we're doing right to have achieved this. And I think in that regard, Guyana has been offered an award to travel to Rome later this month to receive that award for this outstanding achievement. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of specifics and general problems relating to our environment. And all of us, as I said, let us begin with ourselves, but also try to extend that to communities. The wars that take place in our world is devastating a lot of lives and a lot of resources and a lot of our history and culture that doesn't belong to individual country, but belong to humanity, belong to the globe, the world at large. We should try to work to direct our energies away from such wars and to fight these wars like the one that affect our environment and affect our people. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll ask you permission to leave because I have to go to another meeting. Thank you very much.
We're celebrating Guyana being one of 17 countries to improve nutrition. It's really something that we should all celebrate. I want to add though to what the President has just said. When he mentioned all of those factors that result in wastage of food, I think he missed one. And I would like to add that one. I believe that surplus production should also be added there. Oftentimes, and we have it even here, when there is surplus production, farmers, they tend to throw them out because they do not want, because maybe if they don't, maybe there's a money factor involved in this. If they don't, maybe their products will sell for less than what it is worth. So that is something else that we will have to look into or start to think about. I would now like to invite to the podium the Honorable Minister of the Natural Resources and Environment Ministry, Mr. Robert Fasad.
Thank you very much, colleague ministers, officials of government, representatives of the diplomatic corps, members of parliament, heads of agency, students, all the invitees. I think it is also again a breach of protocol to be speaking after the president, but I've decided to give the president had a 10 o'clock meeting and I kept him here until 10:22. But just to say that, as was pointed out by the president, the government's commitment in terms of addressing the issues of the environment were unwavering, and that we continue to be aware of the constant current as well as some of the emerging threats to our environment in a very holistic way. And if there is one single aspect of our efforts to improve and manage and certainly to modernize our country, it is bearing in mind the importance of having one, sustainable development of our natural resources, and at the same time looking at the issues that concern our environment. There are many new developments taking place in our country, and with wealth and expanded economic activities both on and off the coast, those bring with it the concomitant difficulties. And we've talked about the issue of garbage and the need for us to be much more focused on that. And I do hope that the constant theme and the constant message will resonate, and will resonate with all those who have some responsibility in terms of ensuring that systems work. But at the same time, it will resonate with every single Guyanese, as the president urged, that we all look at our individual action. But we're also constantly looking at ways in which we can do our job better in terms of balancing the development of our natural resources and at the same time looking at the issues of the environment. And as the UNDP Res Rep would have pointed out, we have constant engagements on how it is we can look at best case situations and bring those to Guyana. We welcome the initiative of the Guyana Shine initiative of the US, the British, Canadian, and EU missions. Currently, we are in discussion with the Japanese government too, in terms of that government supporting some of the steps that we are embarking on. So We don't take the view that we have all the answers. We haven't taken the view that we have reached at the comfortable point and that proud point in terms of addressing all the issues as it relates to the environment. So for us, it is a lot of work, a lot of tasks to be done. But we need to ensure that at the national level, we have that type of support. At the Environmental Protection Agency, and the chairman is here, who's also the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, we're currently looking at some reorganization of that entity. We're currently looking at how it is we can improve its functioning, because there is now greater demand of the EPA, both at the community level as well as the expanded activities that are taking place. We've just completed a review of 77 new guidelines, and as you have heard, we're currently, or sometime today, we will be putting into effect a number of regulations that go after the issue of littering and garbage disposal. We're also looking in terms of creating a new compliance division within the EPA to ensure that businesses and companies and individuals too, that they also carry out their responsibilities. The point I'm making is that, yes, we've achieved a lot, and the President has talked about the much heralded low carbon development strategy and the work being done by Mr. Nutt and his team at the OCC in terms of implementing the LCDS and looking at the issues of climate change. But for us, we need to ensure that more and more stakeholders get on board. I'll give you a simple example, which was most disappointing. We have not only the issue, we talk about the wide issue of garbage, and we're looking at how it is that we can deal with plastics and plastic containers. And a simple amendment was proposed whereby all plastic containers, not only those that are imported as part of beverage, but all those being utilized here, that we have the $5 environmental tax. It was 10 for only imported, but we wanted to ensure that it's used not only in beverage, but in all the areas, that $5 be put to be applied. This was rejected by the National Assembly. And yet we continue to hear platitudes that we need to do something about it. But we're trying to do something about it, but we need the support. And that's an example, and it sometimes frustrates the effort, and sometimes sends mixed signals to the wider Guyanese community when we talk about persons taking individual and collective action, all stakeholders. And I want to urge the private sector that they too have a role in this regard. I want to urge businesses that they too have a role in supporting such initiatives. We started to talk to the beverage companies and looking in terms of how it is we can convert, as was pointed out, trash into money, and that has started already. A number of proposals were yesterday discussed at the level of the cabinet in terms of us having some of these business initiatives going. So there's much we can talk about, there's much we can celebrate, and certainly as we expand our economy and look at new activities, I want to assure everyone that we will not compromise on issues of the environment and ensuring its sustainable use and development. There's one point I wanted to address that I heard my good friend Khadija refer to, and that is people buying up resources and more or less buying up our future. I want to give the full assurance on behalf of our government that we are open to foreign investment, but we are not open to selling our souls and ourselves and our future. There's two distinct notions in this regard, and any foreign investor will have to apply by our laws, and they will not in any case be they from China, India, US, Europe, even within the Caribbean. We will not in any way jeopardize the future of our country and, as it were, bargaining out our natural resources just for the sake of a few dollars. It will not work like that. And that is the sensible approach that we've taken in this regard. We're not desperate. We need development, but we're not desperate. And we're going to do that in a very holistic way and what is good for the people of Guyana. And again, I restate the expanded activities, be it in mining and other extractive areas, be it in forestry, be it in tourism, and in the other new developments, we will continue to take on board. But we continue to be open to ideas, we continue to reach out to partners in this regard, and certainly on this World Environment Day, it will give us the assurance that certainly what we've been doing is certainly along the right path, and with additional support, national buy-in and continued international support, we will continue to make success. Once again, I want to thank you and all the agencies who have supported, all those who've done some hard work in certainly bringing to light these important topics as we celebrate World Environment Day. Thank you again.
Thank you, Comrade Minister. I think that was succinct enough, but I would also like to add, and this is my personal view, I hope that Parliament rethinks having that tax on all those materials that can cause harm to our environment. I hope that they rethink it and that they reverse it, and soon. Let's move on with the program. We will now have a dramatic piece titled Compost from the Marian Academy.
When Elenosaurus awoke from her nap, she was very confused.
Yeah, where do we go? The compost fairy. Well, who do we have here? I have a plastic milk bottle. I have a paper towel. I got your wrapper. Wow, this is some waterfall markets and magic. So excuse me, where do I go? I'm back totally wrong. Here. Hey, with me, the wicked witch of the waste. Oh! I take all the waste I can get my hands on. I love collecting garbage for my gigantic landfill. One day, my trash piles will cover the world. No, but I want to create any way for her. She gets to the cream. Well, then, in the service, you should include less packaging. But only what you need, and we have them to risk saving the time. Like or because it's nice. Some vegetables like us are healthier for you. And we're working really to use something with packaging like milk, hands on try pictures, recycling, or use for films. So the waterfall like follow the floor arts. The juice, reuse, recycle, and rot. Okay, I understand.
So Elenosaurus went with the compost fairy and her food waste to the Marian Recycling Project. This was a place where she could find a garbage can, recycling bin, and compost heap all in one place too. With the compost fairy's help, they found their way there in no time, although the wicked witch of the waste followed them all the while.
I'll get your leftovers and all of your waste too. Open up the landfills. You can just sit there forever, getting stinkier and stinkier. I'll smell so bad. Now quit!
The group followed the compost fairy, and Elenosaurus was ready to properly dispose of them. But when they were all saying their final goodbyes,
This waste is mine! No! I'll go with Stumper! Take her down! Get my bits! Juice! Recycle! And rot! No! I'm disintegrating! How can you do this to me? I was doing the world with so much trash!
now Elenosaurus was free to sort the waste left over from her lunch. She put the milk bottle and aluminum foil into the recycling bin. An orange and paper towel in the compost heap with banana. Bottle and foil were made into new bottles and aluminum foil for other dinosaurs to use. And all of her compostable food waste broke down in the compost bin. After a couple of months, she put the compost in her garden and
She grew a beautiful spring garden with flowers like me. She also grew a vegetable garden, where she planted plantains,
You can help fight off the wicked witch of the waste and her evil landfills. All you have to do is follow the 4 R's.
Reduce the amount of waste you create regardless of what it is. You can for them quickly. And when you're done with something, recycle everything you can or put it in compost to rocks. Reduce. Recycle rocks. Work together to reduce our footprint. Work together to reduce our footprint. Do your part. Think smart.
Juice, soda, or water bottles. These are collected by Hetram and Sons for recycling. White, photocopied paper, and carton boxes can be taken to Caribbean containers for recycling. Do you know that we can reduce styrofoam food boxes by using the new food boxes made from recycling materials? And what is so good about it, they are biodegradable. Thank you.